some of the work that I've been exploring in classes has led to a few conclusions, mostly about how this might look. So in the planning process, some of the conclusions that I've drawn are that right from the beginning with students and their learning tasks in a secondary context, I set very clear expectations about what aspects of learning are encouraged in home language, or in English, or in target language. I also let them know from the start what exactly will be assessed, and we will discuss together what ways home language might support the learning that will get them to the assessment point. We also, through discussion with my students, had a lot of ideas about, okay, if they're the experts in their home languages, what am I doing there? And I've explained to my students that teachers do have a lot of expertise, including classroom management, that they should have high expectations of me coming in, having planned the space in their learning for their home languages to enter, and that a lot of the units of work that we do, I can manage them like quite large projects. That when it comes to explicit teaching in the classroom, that one of my jobs is to help them go from their home language knowledge and their knowledge of English to a target language, or in EALD is to shift from what they bring to the classroom across to standard Australian English. I'm also an expert in text types, text structures, grammar, vocabulary, ICT, and more skills that the students can use me as a resource. We made a list together with students that they are experts in their home languages, that they're doing a lot of their learning with each other, and they are actually communicating across various home languages. They make their own contacts in community and they bring the knowledge from home. Quite often this will be written into homework tasks. So again, it's about the quite deliberate planning of what they will bring. They're also pragmatics experts in ways that I don't have the variety of language knowledges that they do. And they support their peers with all of the work in the classroom, regardless of which language they're using, whether it's in their ICT skills or often it's in proofreading, where they're able to speak in one language and help each other to develop their texts in another language. So, thank you. Just to give you a few ideas on what that might look like.
One of the things that I often get asked is, this is great. We know that multilingual students use languages for lots of things outside the classroom, but they've got to get their assignments done. They've got to pass their tests and their exams. How does this all fit together? So one thing that I find quite useful to talk to teachers about is that we can look at the vertical multilingual dimension and the horizontal as having different applications a lot of the time, not all of the time. So this is like a mnemonic more than, a rule. When we look at the vertical dimension, we see high status genres, academic expression, technical vocabulary, and academic outcomes, which are often in English, but in our case also the target language. And these allow students to access powerful forms of language. And we often build these through genre-based and functional pedagogies. And these are the things that students, particularly as they progress through their language learning, need to be able to achieve well in assessments. On the other side is the horizontal dimension, where we see, the natural, the personal, the social language use, where speakers draw on different repertoires and negotiate meaning across a range of systems. The focus is on the goal of communication, and the form and formality of doing that is not necessarily as important. This is also a really important part of the process of learning, and this is where we're trying to bring in these multilingual pedagogies. So one way to think about it, and it is a simplified way, is that the vertical aspects of multilingual literacies might be the product that students are producing, the more academic side of things, whereas the horizontal dimension really supports the process of learning. So it can be useful to think about things that way, but it can also be really powerful and interesting to think about how can I bring horizontal dimensions into the product of learning and to make these more visible in the classroom. And the good news is, I'm going to give you a few examples. On your table you'll see some resources, and we don't need to go to those quite yet, but I'll explain them for you because there's 3 sets of things that you're going to be using next. The first is a template, which is just a task analysis template, and then we're going to use these. On this side is space for you to write your thoughts. So there's both matching and writing here. You've got a plastic bag and an envelope. So I'll explain what these are. The first thing you might notice is the A4 pages. These are samples of work, and these can be matched against descriptions of tasks. The descriptions of the tasks are in the envelope. They are conveniently cut up for you, and turns out they're just the right size to fit in the top left box. So there's a bit of blue tack on your table as well, so you can, stick down the task description, stick down the matching student sample or teacher sample it might be, and then have a go at adding your thoughts down on the right-hand side. Match the description of the task and the excerpt of student work, or there may be excerpts of classroom practice. Try and think about the purpose of translanguaging in this task and the skills that students are using, and we'd love your thinking about how to adapt it to your particular context. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry to have to pull you away from such rich discussion. So I hope and I think that you got some ideas out of this. I want to pass on my enthusiasm for multilingual and translanguaging tasks in the classroom. They really do work, and they can be a bit of an energiser in terms of making things different, making things interesting, but also making a strong connection to what students know and bring to the classroom. But I know we often think, well, I don't really know how to do this. I haven't, gone into this. I haven't had a lot of training. So my message here is, don't worry. I find as a teacher, and also for my students, multilingual and translanguaging tasks can be really fun, really engaging, and they don't have to be that difficult. Start small. Listen to your students. What are they into? Maybe they love K-pop, or maybe there's a great new show on TV that they're into that's multilingual, or maybe they watch a lot of gaming streams that bring in different languages. Use that, build on what the students can already do and go from there. Build your own confidence by starting with something that you're into. But I hope that you can find something fun to do in the classroom that brings in the multilingual and the translanguaging aspects.
We have a question here. How can translanguaging be used effectively and meaningfully for SES 1 and 2 students?
I was just telling May about this wonderful essay that I read by a student for a language study, where he was writing about what are the advantages of knowing more than one language when working for Woolworths. And his text samples were conversations that he had with another Cantonese-speaking colleague. By the way, they're both Year 12 students who were working night fill for Woolworths. And so he was analysing why were they speaking in Cantonese and how was that accepted in the workplace. Another text sample was about a customer who he seems to attract customers who arrive and speak to him in Vietnamese because of the neighbourhood that Woolworths is found, and so he found that was something he could comment on in his language study. And the last one was about how he can actually help customers to relax when they're approaching him for information. So that's just one example of how he found a really interesting topic from his own life as a multilingual person. Another example was the use of text messages. And so her language study was, how do bilingual text messages show what people are thinking, in their friendship exchanges. So they were able to submit those with the samples of text, screenshots of emoticons, emojis and everything else. So I think what you can do in SACE is only limited by both your students and your imaginations within the parameters of the SACE tasks.
We have seen in the past too much separation between the target language and English as the two dominant languages in the SACE. Everything the kids have to produce is clearly constrained and divided one or the other, and it's not the way kids think, and it's not the way they process language. And I think we could, through the class work, we're always trying to get both the best communicative outcome from the kids, but also the deepest cognitive outcome. And if you need to move between two languages in order to do so, that surely is advancing your understanding. So we've just got to, break down some of our constraints that have been imposed upon us by the rules of the past and realise that developing bilinguals move between their two languages rapidly and in spontaneous ways, and that's what we should be looking for.